Yeah, we had a question about how to help kids with the rules that may initially feel really strict, but that are important to follow for their own safety, especially coming out of a year and a half, a year and change, um, from sheltering in place. A lot of these rules at school may feel just too, uh, yeah, just too strict. And so, how do we help children, especially the younger ones? The younger ones, how do we help them navigate these strict rules?
You know, so one of the things that I probably, I would share with kids is that, that there are different rules in all kinds of different places. And then I would use multiple different examples, like at home, this is how, at home, this is how we manage our safety. But when we have to go to the grocery store, the rule is we have to wear our masks inside. So we wear a mask because that's the rule for that place. Or another common place where they might be familiar with, and keep using as many examples of different settings with different types of rules or different things that are asked of different kids, and explain that school's no different. School is a place that has rules and expectations, and here might, and then bring up what some of the rules might be, and how, and how to sort of appropriately follow those rules, and explain that, like, again, that flexible, adaptable mind, the idea that there's going to be, like in life, we have to be the skill of being able to transition into multiple spaces is a skill. And so it's okay to start preparing them for that skill, the skill that different settings and different places have different rules, and different requirements. And again, use spaces that are familiar to your kids as examples. So when I think of my own kids, I think of, like, well, when we go in the grocery store, these are the rules. And my kids might say, well, why do we have to do that? And I say, well, in order for us to get the groceries that we need so we can make dinner tonight, they say that everybody has to wear their masks, and then we have to use hand sanitizer. We have to stay in this line, and we have to go one at a time, and we stay on our dot, and just practice some of those safety skills in multiple settings, and use those as examples. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. What about Carmen? Is there a question from your group?
I can't hear Carmen.
Oh, I think it's because Carmen might be on the Spanish side.
Oh,
Carmen, if you want to come over to the English side.
Can you
now
hear
we
me
can. Now we can. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, just difficult to pick just one question because we have several very good ones. But here's one. What's going to happen if somebody at school is tests positive for COVID? What are going to be the protocols? What should one do as a parent?
So I can't speak to any school specific plan because I don't want to misspeak about what OUSD is saying, or but what I can say, what I'm most familiar with in terms of guidelines. So if your kiddo or your child is in a classroom where somebody was exposed, or you've learned, right, that somebody has tested positive for COVID, my recommendation is, right, to check your own symptoms, but really to be on the safe side is, out of an abundance of caution, I'd really recommend you and your family get tested as well, right? It is not something I enjoy doing. I've had to do it now multiple times with my kids. But again, in order to, I think, feel that my household is safe, that my kids are safe, that when there has been the possibility of their exposure, I either have waited to hear, did other people test and did they test positive or negative, or I plain and simply, out of an abundance, go and get tested. And there's this some people don't recognize there's many places to get tested that are free. This shouldn't be a cost to you. Really, the biggest thing is it's an inconvenience. But to me, knowing my kids and my family are safe, I'm willing to be inconvenienced by ensuring that they're okay. So again, I think my recommendation would be to get tested.
Great, and maybe my colleague Thomas can drop in the chat again that Oakland side article that speaks specifically to what's going to happen in Oakland and OUSD when there is a case. And it also has a link for the 10 different places or schools and beyond you can get tested. What about Thomas? What came up in your group?
Great, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So our group also was concerned, you answered it a little bit about kind of the changing rules and how rigid the rules are and you know, what sort of, you know, worried about consequences for kids not following the rules and helping their kid to kind of navigate that. So that was definitely a question that you touched on a little bit, but wanted to highlight that also. And then another question was centered on, you know, when, for example, one child in particular, maybe you have multiple children and one in particular is more concerned or scared or fearful about COVID, about returning to school, and that kind of thing. So recognizing kind of the individual nature of kids and responding when they don't want to go to school or they don't feel safe, and how can we navigate that?
So I'm going to unpack, you know, there's a lot there.
Entonces, vamos a desglosar.
So I'll share that, you know, you're right. Each, you know, if you have multiple kids, each of your kids are going to experience this differently, just like each of us experienced, you know, we each had our own experience and have our own feelings. So I think, again, that check-in with family and your kid is important. So, you know, you do a large family check-in and you realize that there's one of your kids needs more specific attention, right? Sort of digging deeper into what's going on for that kiddo. And then again, I think when I think about a kiddo who's worried or uncertain or anxious, again, I really feel that is because they are feeling they're not able to visualize, or they haven't experienced what's to come. And so they're feeling worried about that uncertainty. So that's why I really shared again, how can you include your child in this process, in this experience, so that they can feel agency and ownership. Because I think as kids get involved in the process, then the information starts to become clear for them as well. And then they have a little bit less to worry about along the way. And so, I mean, any new transition is going to come with some worry. You know, I think about my son who just started a day camp a few weeks ago. And, you know, my whole family, unbeknownst to me, I had a ton of feelings about him going to camp. I didn't think I would. And then all of a sudden realize, like, oh, I've been with them so closely for so long that actually I was kind of having my own separation anxiety, like my own sadness that we weren't together anymore. And, you know, like my son was like, I wish my younger sister could come with me to the camp. And my daughter was like, well, what am I going to do? What do you mean the whole pack is breaking up? And I think about, and we just, really, the only thing I can say that I did was just unpack that with them, is talk to them about it and to share that, like, I was, again, when I said normalize feelings, mommy was feeling like that too. I didn't think I would, but I did. And so then kids will say, oh, you felt like that too, Mom? Yeah, I've been experiencing this with you. I have these feelings, I have these worries, and together we're going to navigate it together. So again, I really just think it goes back to having those open lines of communications, doing those ongoing check-ins with your kiddos, if it needs to be a one-to-one, and including them in the process.
Meka, I think that my group cheated a little bit because they knew that you also had a background in special education. So there was conversation around what can be done to advocate for the unique needs in the retransition when you have a child that has an IEP or a 504 plan, that has a special education plan? And specifically, like, what do you do if you are not being heard, right? If you're reaching out to the school and you want to have specific support or specific plans and people aren't responding to you?
Well, from my special education hat, if you have a student with an IEP and you're reaching out, first of all, my recommendation would be to reach out to try and schedule a meeting. And the reality is a school has 15 days to respond to your request for. So if you have a student with an IEP and you're feeling uncertain or worried and you want to talk to your kid's team, my recommendation is that you make a formal request for that meeting, because they're legally required 15 days.
And formal in writing, right?
And so I'm saying formal in writing, yes, because then there's a paper trail. That is the key, because even if they decide not to get back to you, you can make another request, and this time a little bit more demanding, informing them that they breached their 15-day obligation, and that if you don't hear from them, then my recommendation would be to seek advocacy. And there's some advocacy groups like DREDF, DREDF, which is a disability rights educational consultancy group. Other people that you might need to support you to sort of muscle your way through. Another thing, though, that I like to tell people about that lots of people don't know about, but for kiddos with IEPs in particular, is to simply hold a meeting. It doesn't have to be an IEP meeting. I call them MAPS meetings. They're called Making Action Plans. And the goal of the meeting is not the same as the IEP. It's not to talk about goals and services, but really to talk about things like, what are our hopes and dreams for my kiddo coming back to school? What are some things that I'm worried about? What are some strengths that my kid has? And then some growth areas that could we plan together in preparation for school, right? And then the goal is to take this series of questions and to action plan, is to just make a plan. So like on the first day of school, when my kiddo arrives, they know they get to do a check-in with a trusted adult because we've already decided that in their plan. We know their schedule in advance. So again, I would request the meeting in formal writing. They have 15 days to respond. If you're not getting the support, I'd seek advocacy. And I'd also just request, like, can I have a meeting with, their new teacher and my case manager? Like, explain to them, I'm not looking to have a full-blown IEP meeting. I want just to help my kid with this transition.
Thank you, Meka.